Welcome back. And as was mentioned earlier in the show, one of our conversations we'll be having today is with Honorable Wilfred Elrington, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Belize. Good morning.
Good morning,
and thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Belize. You're very welcome.
Now, I know you appreciate these early mornings as well, and it's a beautiful morning here.
Beautiful morning.
Yes.
Glorious.
And from what we understand as well, it has been a quite productive past 3 days.
I think so. It has been a very, very good meeting.
Yeah. Now, Honorable Elrington, one of the things that we have had conversations about quite often, in fact, the last we had here in Placencia was talking about integration in Central America. Once again, one of the things that we have definitely seen highlighted in this particular intersessional is how important integration between CARICOM is when it comes to addressing major issues.
Well, you know, it is not only for CARICOM. The European Union really is a pioneer in terms of integration because they saw the importance of it. When you have critical mass, the bigger you are, the stronger you are, the more powerful you are, the better you are to protect yourself against any kind of shocks, any kind of emergencies. You are better able to deal with circumstances because you are bigger, you are more powerful, you are more wealthy. You have more brain power, brain trust because of their size. So integration is absolutely imperative, essential. And countries like us would be doing much worse, much worse, were we not integrated. Unfortunately for us, we are integrating both in CARICOM and SICA. So we are benefiting tremendously from this collective.
Now, Prime Minister Dean Barrow, Belize, is the current chair of CARICOM, and now being in the position to lead this particular intersessional, you have the opportunity to set the tone and the pace as to how things are going. Would you say it's been successful so far?
Yeah, this is the first intersessional meeting that we are chairing, and it's going very well. Of course, you know, we have had the benefit of the work done by the previous Prime Minister who chaired, and that was Frondel Stewart of Barbados, a very brilliant man, and we will also be having the benefit of the one that is to come, which is Prime Minister Skerrit of Dominica, so that we will not be working on our own. We will be working on what is called a bureau to make sure that the affairs of CARICOM are properly looked after for the next 6 months.
Let's move into what has been the primary issue of discussion in the meeting so far, and that has been the derisking crisis. Locally, we have been having several conversations about this issue, and it was 2 weeks ago, I believe, the Prime Minister returned from Washington after having high-level meetings in terms of being able to put Belize in a better position. Let's talk about the potential action plan that should be finalized by today.
Essentially, the decision that seemed to be coming out of the meeting is that we need to take actions in different fronts, perhaps most important being the political action, and that we should be using both our own local political clout and also the political clout that can be wielded by our diaspora abroad. Because in the final analysis, it is politicians who made the decisions which we are now suffering from. And this is a classic case, in my view, of the unintended consequences of legislation, because I think the legislation that is now impacting us were taken because of the 2008-2007 financial crash. And they are seeking to ensure that, in fact, that never happens again. So stringent legislations have been passed both in Europe and in the United States to prevent against money laundering, corrupt practices by banks and the like, making sure that people's monies are safe. And the consequences of that is that legislation have been passed which are imposing tremendous fines on banks when they are found to be wanting. They are imposing on them tremendous regulatory obligations, know your customer, due diligence and the like. And the cost that is associated with those activities, in the view of some banks, outweigh the benefit. if in fact I can be fined, for example, $2 billion for an infraction arising out of a transaction between a bank in Belize and a bank in the United States. And the banks in the United States are saying, no, we are not going to do Belize's business, because if we work all year with Belize, we probably will only earn $8 million. Whereas if there's an infraction, we may be charged perhaps as much as $1 billion. When they do the cost-benefit analysis, it is not worth it. And so those banks are saying, we don't want to do business with these small jurisdictions. And it is not only in Belize. This is happening all over the world, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East. This is what is happening, because the banks are saying it is not worth our while to have to pay such great fines or to have to do such great due diligence, when in fact the monies we are making from these little banks and these countries is really insignificant. So that's the problem. And so it is the responsibility of governments to lead. We have to find solutions to these problems, and it is best to do it collectively. It's a problem that all of us are faced with. When I was in Malta earlier this year, or late last year, the Commonwealth was grappling with the same issue, and they offered to provide us with assistance, because people can't even send monies. People who work in the States can't even send monies back to India or to Africa or wherever they live because of these draconian legislation. And so it's something that has to be dealt with collectively. And that is basically what we are seeking to do. Marshalling the forces, and that will involve political work as well as technical work, to make sure, and trying to come up with different strategies to assure the banks that we need to rely on, these correspondent banks, that in fact, in the event they have to be made to be paid fines, we can in fact in some way indemnify them. So there are a number of options that are being looked at, and after this session there's going to be a press conference later this afternoon, and I'm sure Prime Minister Barrow will be able to go in further details as to the different measures that will be agreed upon.
And in terms of the recommendations that Belize is putting forward at this point?
I am told that the finance meeting that was held on Monday, the Belize Central Bank governor was absolutely brilliant, very, very brilliant. And basically, the recommendations that are coming out are really kind of collective recommendation. See to what extent we can perhaps get greater mass in terms of the service for these correspondent banks. For example, more of us can get together and work with one bank, or maybe we can try to find some way in which we can, as I said, indemnify these banks for the services that they provide. But my sense is that the proposals are all a host of proposals that are coming forward at this time, and with a view to arriving at a solution.
Now, Prime Minister and the government have been they've not held back in talking about what the repercussions of this can potentially be. But in terms of the discussions taking place here, we hear firsthand about how smaller island states are being severely affected. Let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, if you can't have correspondent banking relationship, it means that you have difficulty sending monies abroad to pay for the food that you need to import, to pay for the medicines that you need to import. The people who come here to invest in the country don't want to invest, because how will they be able to get their money back to the country where they come from? So you are faced with the prospect of a reduction in investment in the country, a reduction in your capacity to produce goods and services for export abroad, because you don't have foreign exchange. Everything we do, we need foreign exchange for. And in the absence of being able to get your payments cleared through the facility of the correspondent banks, you are really in big, big trouble.
How optimistic are you that the action plan will be finalized today and that action will be taken shortly after?
The action plan has to be finalized. As a matter of fact, I think yesterday's, when the deliberations we had yesterday went a great length to ensuring that that is going to be done. And there is no doubt that it is going to be implemented. This is something that affects all of us. And the leaders of the region are very, very determined and resolved. And, you know, we have had fairly good success in dealing with emergency issues and issues that are difficult in the region. As a matter of fact, the report we got on the climate change meeting in COP21 in Paris was very, very positive. We did a great job. And I'm sure that we are going to overcome this particular obstacle in the same manner. But the important thing is that we have collective action, clearly informed by data and information. And our technical people across the region are very, very, very good. And then we have friends in the various countries and regions. In the Commonwealth, for example, Commonwealth have membership people coming from 5 of the 7 continents in the world. And the Commonwealth, we are part of the Commonwealth, all of us, and they are very well disposed to assisting us. And we have talked to the Americans. The officials are disposed to assisting us too. But the problem is that this is really the private owners of the banks are fearful. It is not so much the government. And what we have to try to do is to get the governments to maybe do something with their legislation or give the banks some kind of assurance that in fact they need not fear doing business with us. So it's a technical matter as well as political matter.
Now let's talk about some of the other issues on the agenda. You spoke about climate change, which I want to get to, but a secondary issue that has been a part of the conversation is crime and security and how the entire region is battling this particular issue. In Belize of recent, we've had a few sensational cases, some which affect very negatively tourism, and it has been something that is obviously closely monitored locally and outside. Let's talk about what the conversation has been like so far.
The issue of security is perhaps as high as any other issue on the agenda for the heads, because the kinds of crimes that are taking place now are not unique to any particular country. As a matter of fact, crimes seem to be overtaking all our societies, big and small. I mean, look at Mexico. Mexico is the fear is that Mexico is going to fail because the criminals are so dominant in that society. And in all our countries, we have the same problem. What is happening in Belize is being replicated in St. Kitts Nevis, in Jamaica, in Trinidad. And so it is a matter of tremendous concern to the region. And very many strategies are being devised to deal with it. In our region, we are being assisted tremendously by the United States, I must say that, in helping us to protect and prepare ourselves for it. But we also have in the region a local institution that is dedicated to ensuring that the region is kept safe. And we're working very closely with that institutions located in Trinidad. And the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister is in fact responsible for the security in the region. And they are looking at all aspects of security. And there are areas where you would not think you have security problems, that you have security problems, you know. So one particular area we dealt with yesterday was a question of economic citizenship, because you can give people citizenship who might be security risks. So it's being looked at very carefully and very responsibly by the heads, but we regard it as a very important matter.
Now, in terms of new directions, because several of the issues that we are seeing have been constant, you know, whether it's related to the drug trade, whether it's gang related, whether, you know, several of these issues have been around for some time. There are some emerging threats. We talk now about the recruitment of terrorists within the region as well. So what are the new directions that are being explored in terms of being able to address this?
That's a very good question, because as we all know, the war on drugs, even though it was being launched by the United States and maintained by the United States, seemed to be a war that we have in fact lost, or that we are losing. So it's a question of how do we come up with new strategies. all I can say is that basically what we are doing now at this point in time, what seems to be the prominent focus, is to ascertain exactly what is happening, who is in fact involved, and how best to combat them. And I think it is still a work in progress. It's thought being given to it because it's very difficult. Every time you look around, a new means is devised. For example, a lot of the encouragement to commit crime now seems to be done through the internet. You can find all kinds of advice on the internet as to how you can build bombs and how you can engage in terrorist activity and the like. And then in some of our countries, it's so very easy to acquire guns and to utilize them. And of course, the information age has made it so much easier for criminals to communicate and criminals to operate cross-border. The truth is that it does not seem as if we have the resources as a region to properly deal with these activities. So that it's a question really of trying continuously to evolve new ways to combat the criminal activities, but at the same time they themselves seem to be almost ahead of the game. It's almost a case of catching up, you know. We in Belize, as you know, have been increasing the police force tremendously. We have been doing a lot of intakes, a lot of training, but notwithstanding that, you see that we seem to be having an increase in the commission of crimes, so that we will have to continue to strengthen the security forces. My own view is that we'll have to do a lot more education and try to ensure that the kids, the youth particularly, who have been marginalized and excluded in the past are brought into mainstream, so that they can have, in fact, mainstream employment and don't have to rely on the criminal element to provide employment for them. I think that's one of the bigger problems. People are looking for employment, people are idle, people don't have anything to do, no skill, no direction. And I think that's one of the major causes of the problem. But the region is looking at all these issues in a holistic way and trying to come up with means to deal with them holistically. Along with our partners, the Europeans are doing a tremendous amount of work along with us, as well as the Americans. And we are working both in terms of CICA and in CARICOM together, the Interpol, FBI, and the like.
Now, let's talk about the issue with CSME. Of recent, we had the rice debacle that took place in Belize, and it brought attention to what is allowed for under CSME and the question as to whether or not we are securely protected within the treaty to ensure our own economy to thrive. Has that been a part of the conversation that has continued here at the intercession?
I don't think that issue was touched. Certainly has not been touched thus far, that particular issue. With respect to that issue, really, I think it was a mountain, a molehill that was turned into a mountain, really. I think in my own recollection of the details are that the importer sought to import the rice without having the requisite permit. That was all. And of course, that was sensationalized by the media and by different elements in the society. But my recollection is that we had done it previously. In previous years, rice was brought in. A different group brought it in. They brought it in without any problem. And it was allowed because they went through the proper procedures. So that I don't think that there's any difficulty in bringing in rice or whatever it is that we need to bring into the region from our CARICOM countries, so long as we go through the proper procedure. And the intention ultimately is to allow all our goods to flow freely from one country to the next. Look how many different types of beers are now coming in from the region. Heineken, Presidente, different ones, no problem, because that is the intention of the CSME, to make it possible for all our goods to flow freely from one country to the next. And the rice situation, to my mind, was completely blown out of proportion. It reflects negatively on the CSME. I think it largely has to do with the, to my mind, absence of sufficient information that is given to our population. We have people who are very bitter, who complain very bitterly about chukka, who comes in to operate in Belize in tourism, and we complain even before that about Jamaicans who used to come in and fish. But that is the intention of the CSME, and that is also the intention that we have in dealing with CICA, so that these foreign companies who come from countries that belong to our grouping can in fact access our markets. If that were not the case, then why would we get into these markets? And so we have, for example, the Santander issue. Again, it's a company that is operating in Belize that will bring tremendous benefit to Belize, that will bring badly needed foreign exchange and badly needed jobs. And the fact that investment in that enterprise is being made by the Social Security that can really deal with the high rate of interest that is being provided, because although we have the Social Security benefits, they're very limited. All of us would like to see people getting more benefits out of Social Security, but you can only get more benefits if in fact you can invest the resources wisely and get back good returns. So that the suggestion that we should not lend the money to Santander, I find so bizarre. This is what we have to do. Do you know that in fact the biggest investor in China are the Taiwanese? And China is claiming Taiwan. The largest amount of tourists that go to Taiwan come from China. They have a very dynamic trade relationship. There are political differences, but you have to feed your people. You have to educate them. You have to give them good health facilities. And you have to have good infrastructure. You provide for these things through the earnings you get from trade and investment. So the fact that you may have a difference with a country does not prevent you from doing business with them. The United States have difference with Russia, but do a lot of business with Russia. They have differences with China, but they do a lot of business with China. We need to inform our population that this is natural and normal. The fact that you have a dispute with a particular country should not prevent you from doing business with the country. It doesn't happen. If that were the case, the world would be in bad shape.
Now, I think the issue of information has been one that was definitely highlighted by you before. And when we talk about integration in CARICOM and specifically CSME, we've seen that the challenge is getting Belizeans to seek opportunities within the other member states of CARICOM. Now, that has been a continuous problem. Are there any strategies in place to be able to guide? I know there's the CARICOM focal point at this point, and there is a campaign to be able to get people at least certified so that they would be able to access further opportunities. But what can be done to be able to get Belizeans to open their eyes to the opportunities that exist?
I think a lot has to do with the media. The media, to my mind, I think that there should be more information disseminated to the public by the media to tell them what really is happening in CARICOM or what really is happening in CICA and how they can benefit from it. You know, the people who are benefiting most perhaps from our relationship with CARICOM may well be the Mennonites. They sell all their beans, they sell all their corn, they sell all the products that they have to the region. But that is because the Mennonites are more informed than most other Belizeans when it comes to market access and market opportunities. They seek out the information, they seek out the experts who can help them. Other Belizean entrepreneurs are not as resourceful, it seems to me. So what we need to do is to help them some more, you know. In some countries you have institutions that are actually set up to help, even in the United States, to help their citizens access these markets. Maybe we as a government can do more in terms of that, actually set up an office where Belizeans can go and are told exactly what are available in CARICOM and how to access the market. I think that is the kind of thing that we need to do. We need to disseminate information continuously, so that, and we have to find ways to help our people to be able to make their enterprises more viable. But as I'm saying, for all these things you need resources, and Belize is sadly lacking in that, both in terms of financial resources as well as human resources. We really don't have the population to really be able to provide all these services, and we certainly don't have the resources, financial.
Now, there are several other issues that have been on the agenda. Climate change, as you pointed out earlier, is one of them. And we know that the COP21 in Paris was definitely a step in the right direction, and that the Caribbean once again took the lead in being able to secure very important portions of that agreement. What is the next step that is being finalized here?
Well, the next step is being finalized now is for us to work out the modalities to be able to ensure that the gains that were made in Paris are not rolled back, and to ensure that we are able to access all the financing that is available to help us to protect ourselves against this very, very, very serious and existential threat, you know. So we need to do adaptation, we need to do mitigation, we need to provide proper education. The suggestion is that climate change is going to conduce to us having 10 to 20% less water in the society. It is going to give rise to increasing pestilences, like the Zika virus now that is being spread by the Aedes aegypti mosquito. The suggestion is that you may well see a recurrence of things like malaria, because the climate is going to get hotter and the like, so that it is exceedingly important that we have two things: financial resources, manpower, to be able to deal with the consequences of this very, very serious threat to our existence, really. And the region is working. We have the climate change facility in Belize, and then of course we have the Caribbean Development Bank, whom we expect will assist us to try to work out how to access these funds. They have certain modalities that you have to follow to be able to get it, otherwise you don't get the money, although it is there. We are told that Antigua and Barbuda are well on the way to setting up the various measures that are needed for them to access the funds. The rest of us have got to get in line and do that as quickly as possible. So the intention, the move now is to push the community forward to implement the gains that were in fact attained at the COP21 in Paris.
Now, what are some of the other, I mean, you speak a lot about being able to get Belizean, the wider public, to understand why integration is important, why or participation at all these levels have a direct impact on their lives. Understanding that the viewers tuning in right now obviously have an interest in what is taking place here. What do you think are some of the significant markers that you could be able to share?
With respect to integration?
Or with this particular intersessional?
Oh, well, as I'm saying, this intersessional is dealing with the issue of the Zika virus. So that is really going to benefit all of us because we get the expertise. The question of the climate change has got to impact on all of us. So the meeting of the heads here now are going to give the necessary instructions and the go-ahead for our institutions that are responsible for climate change to get into full gear and make sure that we benefit from all the agreements that have been reached in relation to that. We have questions of citizen security. We have got to make sure that all the measures that are available in CARICOM are put to good use in places like Belize and other places, so that we can cut down on the crime, you see. So those are the ways in which the integration is important, because we are not on our own we are getting the benefit both of the information as well as the resources from the region collectively and extra regional, because we get assistance for these things from the European Union, as I said, from the United States, and much of it is channeled through the community. So meetings like these now sort of give the policy direction for how we go ahead in accessing these benefits and making them available to our population.
Well, Honorable Elrington, I want to thank you for sitting down with me this morning and
You're
being
very
a part
welcome.
of our broadcast here.
You're very welcome. Thanks.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, the conversation will focus on Zika as we're joined by the Executive Director of CARPA. So stay tuned.